All right, guys, welcome back. I know it's been a while since we've done a video. Short day today. I thought we'd just do a quick kind of preview of our three-dimensional unit. We're going to do some quick definitions. I've got some pictures you're going to draw and fill out and just make sure we all kind of know some of these terms and things that we're talking about. So three-dimensional shapes. First thing, you should have this page of notes. You're going to fill it out as I go along. In fact, you're probably going to want to pause the video every once in a while so that you can fill things in and not miss what we're talking about. So first of all, what is three-dimensional? Three-dimensional is just an object. It's an object with 3 dimensions, which, you know, that makes sense because three-dimensional, 3 dimensions. And what we mean by dimensions are things like it has a height, it has a width, and then maybe depth might be the 3rd dimension. And I feel like most of you are pretty comfortable with that term because really three-dimensional is any object in the real world. Everything in your world, everything that you touch, feel, hold, work with, live with, all of those things are three-dimensional objects because you're three-dimensional and that's kind of the world we live in. The second term, these next ones kind of are words that we use to describe a 3D object, and I want to be really careful that we use them correctly. So we're going to practice them quite a bit. But the first one, we're actually going to skip base, and we're going to start with face. So the face of a three-dimensional object. I'm going to have you write it, and then I'm going to show you what it looks like. But the face is just any of the individual surfaces. So any of the individual surfaces of a solid object. Again, pause the video if you need a minute to write that down. So any of the individual surfaces of a solid object, like, for example, we've got some prisms right here. This top surface is a face. This surface here on the right is a face. This surface in the front is a face. That one on the bottom that you can't really see, but we know it's there because it's sitting on it, that's a face. The left is a face, the back is a face. It's just any of those flat sides of the shape, that is a face of the object. And then, so let's now move up to base. We'll fill that one in. The base is, and again, we'll fill it out, we'll write it down, and then I'll show you what it looks like. But it's the side or face. Now that you know what face is, I really like using that word better. So the side or the face of not of an object, the side or face an object stands on. So it's kind of like the bottom of the shape is the base. But a lot of shapes, the top is also a base if it's the same as the bottom. So I'm going to put or top if it's the same as the bottom. So again, pause the video for a minute if you need to finish writing that down. But here's what our bases look like. On a cone, our base is this round part that the cone is setting on. A cylinder, this is our base. It's the bottom of the shape, but it also has a base that's on top because you could flip it over. Think of like a toilet paper roll. I can take toilet paper and I can flip it over and set it on the other side. Spheres don't really have a base because they just roll around. Prisms, you've got a base here and a base on top. And prisms, we want to be careful with because the base, I think one of the easiest ways to look at it is kind of like saltine crackers. The base is the shape that you can keep setting on top of itself. And as you do, the shape doesn't change. And the reason I say it that way is because, for example, the triangular prism right here, you've got a triangular base on the top and the bottom because those are the same shape. If I were to make the base this rectangle and I kept stacking those on top of each other, I wouldn't have a triangular prism. I would have like a stack of saltines or a stack of graham crackers. It wouldn't look like this shape. So the base is that shape that just keeps getting stacked. I like to look at it like saltine crackers. The base is the shape of the cracker that you keep stacking up on top of itself. So right here on the base, if you want to write saltine cracker shape, that was always a good way for me to remember it when I was first doing these things. Vertex, let's move on to that one. A vertex means a little bit different, same idea in 3 dimensions. A vertex is a point where 3 or more edges meet. It's a point where 3 or more edges meet, and it's kind of like a corner or point of the shape. Again, pause if you need to write that down, but looking at the pictures, our vertexes on the cone, this very top is there's only one vertex. There aren't any vertexes. There's no points or corners on the cylinder or the sphere. On the prisms, all of these corners, these are vertexes, or we call that vertex or vertices is a better way to put it. All of these corners, all of these points are vertices. On the pyramids, you've got one on top and then the ones around the bottom. So that's a vertex. And we kind of used edge in that definition. Maybe we should have done edge first, but they kind of go back and forth a little bit because the edge is the line segment that joins 2 vertices. It's the line segment that joins 2 vertices. So pause if you need to. But in our picture, this straight edge that I drew, that's an edge. This is an edge. This is an edge. It's basically just the straight sides or the straight edges of our shape, which is kind of interesting because some of these shapes up here don't have any of those straight lines because they're not joining vertices. The cone only has one vertice, so there's no edge to connect it to another one. Cylinders don't have any vertices, so there's no edge to connect them. So we've got to be careful with that definition. Lateral faces, just one that I threw on here kind of last minute because I'm going to use that a lot. Lateral faces are kind of the opposite of the base. The base is what the shape sits on, the top and the bottom. Lateral faces are the outside faces, the faces around the edge of the shape or the side of the shape. So lateral faces are faces of the shape that form the sides. So they're around the sides. And if you want to put in parentheses, they're not the bases. The bases are not lateral faces. They're the complete opposite, okay? All right, again, pause if you need to. But when we look at these shapes, these pieces around the sides, those are the lateral faces. So this one in the front, the one on the right, the one on the left. On my cube right here, the one on the right, the one in the back, the one on the left, the one in the front, those are lateral faces, whereas this one on top and on bottom would be my base, okay? All right, so our 3D shapes, we're gonna kind of bounce back and forth a little bit between the picture and giving you some just descriptions of what it looks like. So prisms are these 3 right here. I want you to pause the video and I want you to try to draw those. But prisms are kind of like our sleeves of graham crackers or our sleeves of saltines. They're made up of, and again, pause the video, make sure you have these shapes drawn, and then you can resume the video and fill in the notes. On prisms, when we talk about the faces of the prism, there's at least 3 rectangular lateral faces. If you look at our shapes right here, all of the outside faces, all the lateral faces are rectangular shaped. Even our triangular prism is made up of rectangles around the outside. So there's at least 3 rectangular lateral faces, and then the top and the bottom base, the top and the bottom bases are the same. So if you look at our shape, the triangle on top is the same as the triangle on bottom. The square on top is the same as the square on bottom. Well, relative to my stick figure prisms here. The rectangle on top is the same as the rectangle on bottom. So the top and the bottom are the same. And like most of these shapes, the shape of the base tells us the name of the prism. So this is a rectangular prism because the base is a rectangle. This is a triangular prism because the base is a triangle. This is a square prism, or that has a special name. We call it a cube because the base is a square. All right. So moving on to pyramids. Pyramids look like this right here. You've got a shape on the bottom, the base, which is a square or a triangle. It could be another shape. It could have an octagon on the bottom. But this year, this is the only one that we're going to use. The only pyramids you should see have square bases. And you might not even see those very often, but we're going to put them in our notes just to be safe. So pyramids have at least 3 something faces. If you look at the lateral faces here, the outside lateral faces, they're all triangles. So there's at least 3 triangular lateral faces. So the outsides are triangles. And then moving on, there's only 1 base, and it has at least 3 faces. So when I look at my shape, there's 1 base because there's nothing on top because it comes to a vertex, but there's at least 3 faces around the outside. Okay? And again, the shape of the base tells the name of the pyramid. Pause at any point if you need to go back. Okay? The shape of the base tells me that this is a square pyramid. This is a triangular pyramid. We could have a rectangular pyramid or an octagonal pyramid or a hexagonal pyramid. I just didn't want to draw those. You're welcome to try. Okay, cones. Cones are just what they sound like. They're cones, kind of like one of those pointy sugar ice cream cones that you get when you go to Baskin-Robbins. There's no lateral faces because there's 1 big side. It's not actually a face. It's this weird side that never ends. So there's no lateral faces. The base, if you look at the base of the cone, it's always a circle. And there's only 1 vertex, and that's right at the top where that point kind of comes together. And there are no edges, which is a little interesting. Because there's only 1 vertex, there's no edges because there's no other vertex for it to join. Okay, cylinders are this one right here. They're unique because they're like prisms, but they have a special name, cylinder, because the base on top and the base on bottom are both circles. So both bases, we can write that in right here, both bases are circles. Top and bottom are circles. There are no lateral faces. There's no faces on the outside edges, on the sides of it. It's just 1 big continuous shape. And there's no vertex, or maybe we should put no vertices. There's no vertices or edges. If you look at the cylinder, there's no vertex, there's no edge to connect vertexes, so there's not vertices or edges. And then a sphere. Again, pause the video, draw the picture, please. But a sphere, all points on the outside of the sphere are the same distance from the center. It's kind of like a circle, but in 3D. There's no faces, there's no bases because it just rolls around on the ground or the table. And there's also no vertices or edges, which makes sense. It's a sphere, it's a circle, it's round, so there aren't any sharp corners or points or edges because it's just 1 big round smooth surface, which is why it always rolls off, right? So there's your quick review of 3D shapes. At any point, go back, rewatch if you missed a section, or pause the video right now and make sure you fill in the notes, make sure you have all these details. And as we talk about these over the next 2 weeks, you understand what I'm saying when I talk about vertex or edge or face or base. These are things that we want you to be familiar with. So get those done. Come and see me when you have your notes filled out.